This morning, inside the Greg Abbott political machine, why the governor was never worried about Democrat Beto O'Rourke.
If I had $90 million and I was running against Greg Abbott, I would have made the race much, much closer.
What would you have done? What would you have done, Dave? Dave Carney there, Abbott's longtime political consultant, pulls back the curtain on this campaign. Abortion helped Democrats nationally, but not in Texas. We will ask why. After winning re-election, Dallas County District Attorney John Creuzot confirms he will end a controversial theft policy and the problem discovered under decades of old criminal case files there in his office.
The weight of all those boxes, I'm told, has caused some minor to moderate structural problems with the floors.
And Texas Republicans slightly increased their majorities in the state House and Senate. What that might mean when legislators reconvene in January.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to you. The campaign commercials are over. The votes are tallied, but there is still a lot happening politically across Texas. In Austin, we won't know who will be the next mayor there for a while, at least until next month. 6 candidates ran for mayor of that city. No one got over the 50% mark. State Rep Celia Israel and former State Senator Kirk Watson there are the top 2 candidates. They go to a runoff election December 13th, and the winner will succeed outgoing Mayor Steve Adler, who is term limited out of office. In Houston, Lena Hidalgo won 4 more years as county judge in Harris County, but she barely won it there. Republicans spent millions of dollars trying to defeat her, but Hidalgo hung on. 1 million votes cast, and she won by 17,000. And in Plano, there is one race of note there that we would like to bring up here. Mihaela Plisa, she is the first Democrat in more than 30 years to win a seat representing Collin County in the State House. This is House District 70. It used to be a Republican stronghold, but the legislature redrew it for Democrats last year. This morning, a rare look inside Governor Greg Abbott's decisive win, not from the candidate, but the veteran Republican consultant who has helped orchestrate Abbott's political rise. His name is Dave Carney, well known in political circles. He used to work for the first President Bush, for former Governor Rick Perry, and he has guided Governor Greg Abbott through each of his 3 gubernatorial wins, including Tuesday night's victory over Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, Dave, big congratulations to you and your team. Another one for the books for you guys here. Abbott defeated Beto with almost the same margin that he defeated Lupe Valdez in 2018. What struck me about this one is that he had money, Lupe did not. Beto was well known, Lupe was well not. He was organized, she was not. How did you do it?
It's really simple, fundamental. The grinding part of a campaign, which is being focused on the messages that the voters care about, not just the concern, but the solutions. Secondly, organizing across the state. And I think this year we were really successful in really enhancing and supercharging our efforts in Southern Texas, which closed their margins. And we were able to start to build an infrastructure in the bottom 50 counties to try to, long-term investment to pay off, for the right of center down the road.
I want to ask about South Texas in a moment, but you make it sound easier than it is, I'm sure, because there are so many campaign teams that would love to know your secret sauce here. You say the campaigns need a messenger, money, and a message. I mean, most of them have at least 2. They have a message and a messenger. In this case, you were up against a candidate who was a messenger, who had money, and the message is kind of where everything can go great or go wrong, I guess, though, right?
Right. I mean, I think you need the right messenger. I mean, the exit polls by the networks, not our own work, but the exit polls showed the majority of Texans thought Beto was too extreme for Texas. So, that you're not going to win an election with that. 2 is he was underwater, meaning more people had an unfavorable opinion of him than a favorable opinion of him throughout the entire campaign. And they never did anything, to try to get him back on the right track with voters. And so you had those, so he was really not a messenger. He was flawed. I think secondly, and most importantly, because voters will overlook that if the person's talking about the issues that matter and what they're talking about and what they care about. And whether it's, the economy, inflation, what's going on with crime and the border, parental rights, things like that. And Beto never talked about the economy. He never talked about the key fundamental major issues in the state. He was talking about other things that his base loved, but the normal voters, independent swing voters who decide every election, and in the casual Republican, the casual Democrat voter, didn't care about.
You guys took the Beto campaign seriously. Obviously, we could tell that. But was there ever a point at all, Dave, where you guys were concerned at all with what was happening?
There's nothing that campaign did that said, "Oh my gosh, what are they doing?" There's nothing they did. They ran a very boring, remarkable, hapless campaign. If I had $90 million and I was running against Greg Abbott, I would have made the race much, much closer.
What would you have done? What would you have done, Dave?
I would have focused on a positive message first to revigorate what Beto had in 18. It would never be the same. You can't do a first introduction twice. But the presidential campaign was a unmitigated disaster. There were a lot of progressives in that primary running for president, and he and his team decided, I'm going to out-progressive, the progressives. And so he ran far to the left from what he had done in 18. And he had such potential. So that was a road bump. That was a gigantic, bridge out on the road ahead. And I would have tried to rehabilitate that image of him. And I would I would add a plan, an economic plan, things how my plan is to deal with crime, what my plan is to deal with the border. But he was in denial for 8 months that there was even a problem on the border. I mean, you can't watch all those people coming across the border every single day. And, the administration saying, no one walks across the border. I mean, that's the official position of the White House. That nobody walks across the border. That's not how. Everybody in Texas and the country knows they walk across the border all the time. And he did not even acknowledge it was a crisis along the border. That you can't win. You can't solve a problem if you don't realize you have a problem. So I would have had a positive agenda, and I think that was his big mistake, is thinking from the get-go. I'm just going to attack the governor, and without any predicate that he was a decent guy. He wasn't 19 Beto. He was 18 Beto. And he never laid out a specific agenda on, a 5-point plan on anything. That was a big mistake.
Dave, it's always enlightening and instructive to talk to you. Congratulations again on a huge win on Tuesday.
You bet. Have a good weekend.
We spent more than a half hour with Dave Carney. He pulls the curtain back on 3 things you need to win a campaign, why there's only one gubernatorial debate, and lots more. It's really an Ask Me Anything, and it is only on Y'all-itics. You can download the episode this morning wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Texas Republicans slightly increased their majorities in the State House and the State Senate last Tuesday, expanding their political footprint in Texas and their influence there in Austin. So what kind of priorities should we expect when legislators reconvene in Austin? That's just 2 months from now. Ian Mitra is a senior managing editor at the Texas Tribune. He is in Austin as always for us. Ian, it's good to see you. With this wider majority, slightly wider majority, what do you think the GOP might try to tackle?
Well, the majority is kind of as we were expecting it to be. And I think they've already, a lot of Republican leaders have already kind of signaling kind of where they're going. Obviously, at the top of the list is the budget. We know that there's going to be a projected surplus of about $27 billion. The comptroller has already said that. All of that could change a little bit. And I think, leaders have already kind of hinted at property tax cut, Republican leaders have. So there's going to be an interesting debate about that, like where the property tax cuts are. There's obviously some local concerns about property taxes as well. But I think that's going to be a key concern, as well as like other aspects of budgetary things, whether it's, healthcare funding, education funding, which actually goes into the next thing. Education is going to be a huge topic of debate, public education, and vouchers are sure to be an issue that gets brought up again, in full debate this session.
Yeah, a big conservative priority there. Briefly, I want to ask you about abortion. It helped Democrats nationally, not in Texas. Any idea why?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think, Beto O'Rourke, Rochelle Garza, the attorney general candidate, both of them, figured on abortion issues very prominently in their campaigns. Right. And obviously the numbers didn't reflect that. Obviously for abortion opponents, they saw after passing Senate Bill 8 in the last session, a very restrictive abortion bill, which of course came before the overturning of Roe. Mm-hmm. They saw that as reinforcement of that type of approach, and that voters in Texas support that. And so obviously others, on the other side feel that, there's just, right. It's hard to break through. And so it's really hard to see, but, obviously in states like Kentucky and Michigan, you saw, some pushback on the abortion thing. So there may be some legislation addressing it, but just didn't see that kind of wave. Yeah.
All right. Ian, thanks a lot. Back to you in just a few moments here. Coming up next, Dallas County's controversial theft policy is on its way out. The DA, John Creuzot, on his plans to get rid of it, and what was found under decades of old criminal case files. Plus, fresh off his re-election, will Greg Abbott consider a run for the White House in 2024? One insider says it no longer matters what Donald Trump does. Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Voters gave Dallas County District Attorney John Creuzot 4 more years. This morning, though, Creuzot confirms that he will rescind his controversial theft policy. This is the one where his office does not prosecute people for stealing up to $750 worth of food, diapers, or formula. Creuzot defeated Republican Faith Johnson last week to win this second term, and he spoke to us shortly afterward. Judge Creuzot, congratulations on the big win on Tuesday. Before the election, you told us in an interview you might reconsider your controversial theft policy. You wouldn't want to do it before the election. Now that the election has passed and you won, is that something that you will look at again?
Yes, it is.
When might you look at that, and how might that whole process happen?
Well, the office members of my staff and I have started talking about it. I'm about to leave today. My mother's 95 and I haven't seen her in 3 or 4 months. So I'm going to Houston, and I would expect in the next 2 weeks that, or maybe less, that we will have something out on that.
But you think bottom line is your office might revoke this policy or rescind this policy?
Yeah, I mean, we really haven't had any cases. It's kind of a policy that has created more controversy than has impacted any particular individual. I don't know what to say. I mean, once again, I talked to Walmart, I've talked to CVS. We meet with entities that help them with their theft cases, and I continually get from them, we are not concerned about the policy. We don't have any more loss. We don't have any more problems. I've had no police chief tell me that they have a problem with it. I've had no mayor tell me they have a problem with it. And so I'm assuming the numbers are just like what we see. And what I think is that poor people are being maligned in the sense that I've given them a green light to be thieves. And I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't think poor people are immoral and just looking for an okay to go steal.
Judge, you won a second term, 4 more years as a district attorney, chief prosecutor in Dallas County. What does the next 4 years look like for your office? Top priority, what is it?
Well, we want to continue to combat violent crime. We have a very active gang unit. And when people think gangs, I don't know that people understand. We're talking transnational gangs. We're talking extreme violence. And we have to get those cases to trial. One of the things that we're doing is we're trying to be more efficient in the DA's office, and we're asking the county to give us paralegals, which we've never had, that would help us process the cases and get them to court faster. We're asking for more space in the building to be built out so that we can spread out the lawyers and have a place for 17 paralegals. Right now, if they gave us 17 paralegals, we don't have one office.
How much are you asking county commissioners to give your office for the 17 paralegals and to expand it?
Well, I can't give you a dollar amount because we asked for 6, and I can't right now remember what that was. They gave us 1. And the other part is a build out. So we have a part of the 10th floor of the Crowley building that contains records, our records. I mean, even boxes of cases that I tried back in the 80s are there. And the weight of all those boxes, I'm told, has caused some minor to moderate structural problems with the floors. So first we need to get the boxes out. Then we need
the literal weight of all these case files and evidence has caused structural issues?
Yes. So if I were to take you there and you'd look through it, you would see what I say. You can see the cracks on the floor. Now, they're not major cracks. You can't put your finger on them, but they're cracks.
Wow.
And I don't know what that means. I don't know what's underneath that. I don't know how deep that goes. And a structural engineer will have to look at that. But what we're asking them, and we're making some progress on it, is to remove all those files, take them somewhere else, and then build that out in cubicles and some conference rooms and things. Because right now, my lawyers, they office next to the court all day long, and they cannot get work done with lawyers in and out and judges calling them in and out. And it's too hectic. So we have done some things. We got newer, better, more efficient printers. 2/3 of the felony lawyers did not have cell phones provided by the county. And so we did that so they can better communicate. That's made life a little easier for them. But if we really get the space where they can get away and get time to make their phone calls and look at the videos and things like that, and if we have paralegals, I am certain that we can get the time from indictment to disposition. We can close that gap significantly. I can't tell you what it is. These kinds of things, you monitor them and register your results after they occur, because we don't have it. And so we're very interested in doing that. And Dr. Elba Garcia is working very closely with us, and facilities is working with us. But, we just got past this recent budget year. So this will be something coming up in this upcoming summer and fall. And we hope to get it fully funded and going.
Judge, congratulations again. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Donald Trump said he has a big announcement coming up on Tuesday, perhaps revealing whether he will run for president in 2024. But Travis County Republican Party Chairman Matt Mackowiak says it doesn't matter what Trump does. Expect a number of Republicans to also be running for the White House.
We are in a different era right now in the Republican Party than we were a year ago. I think Trump was the overwhelming leader of the party. He remains probably the largest and most significant figure in the party, but you are starting to see other people step up, create their own power centers, their own power structures, create their own records and their own issues that they're talking about and advocating for. And so we're going to see, I think, a fairly vibrant presidential field in 2024 on the Republican side. Certainly Trump is the front runner. But I think we now can envision a scenario where he may not be the nominee for maybe the first time with as much clarity as we have since he lost in 2020.
This morning, a question Democrats are asking: why did Beto O'Rourke get fewer votes last week than he did 4 years ago? Was something intrinsically wrong with his campaign? The roundtable is ready when we come back. Time now for Reporters Roundtable. To put the headlines in perspective, Ian Mitra is back with us from the Texas Tribune in Austin. Bud Kennedy is here, columnist at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe is a political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Ian, let's start with you, and a big question that the Democrats are asking this weekend. Beto O'Rourke got fewer votes on Tuesday than he did 4 years ago. What happened?
Yeah, well, I think one thing to look at, too, is like looking at who was in the White House in 2018 versus who was in the White House now. And I think, in 2018, there was obviously this was the midterm that was following President Trump's first 2 years in office. I think that motivated a lot of people on all sides to get out and vote. And I think that certainly, obviously there's always going to be some backlash against the person in office in the White House. And so I think that's what you saw in 2018. I don't know if there was as much enthusiasm in this election as by the number of votes, but I certainly look to that. And also, I think a pretty polarizing Senate race that he ran in 2018. I don't know if that was as much the case this time.
And Bud, what struck me about this is that Beto essentially did as well as Lupe Valdez did in 2018. No one knew who Lupe Valdez was.
Right. Of course, she was running on the same ticket with Beto back then. But the difference in this election, that election, there was a villain. Ted Cruz was the villain in that election. And Beto O'Rourke was able to portray him that way. This election, they never were able to portray Greg Abbott as a bad person, although they were able to say that some things in the state hadn't been run well. They just never pinned anything on him or blamed him for anything. And Beto, in a lot of ways, was the villain in this campaign.
Bernadine?
Well, I agree with both of them in the sense that you must have a convincing argument to persuade people to get rid of their leaders. And Beto just didn't have one. And then also, back in 2018, you had former President Trump in office.
Yeah.
And then you also had Ted Cruz. So you had two people who motivated voters to go to the poll. You didn't have that this time.
But let me ask you, just kind of zooming out from this race, if you look at statewide, the Republicans statewide did pretty well. They won with double-digit margins. But the GOP didn't do that well in South Texas like they were thinking they would do.
Well, I think that the Democrats still held South Texas. The turnout in general was not that great, even in those open seats in South Texas. The Republicans couldn't find the seats the votes that they wanted down there. The incumbents were able to hold sway. In general, the Republicans made some headway, but not what they want.
Bernadine, do you still call this a big victory for Republicans?
Oh, no. I think that both parties held their own. And you had the Republicans were able to increase their margins at the top, but they were not able to go into any of these other local races. So I think that the Democrats held their own, the Republicans increased the Republican vote, and this is a Republican state. So I definitely don't think that the that red wave that the Republicans were talking about, it just did not happen.
Ian?
Agreed. I think Republicans can take can talk about the double-digit wins they had in the statewide races, but then whether it was Lena Hidalgo's race in Harris County or in South Texas, I think Democrats can also and Democratic supporters can say that they can point to some successes as well.
Yeah, a fascinating midterm indeed, despite the lower turnout here. Guys, thanks so much. Ian, Bud, Bernadine, thank you very much for your context and your insight as always. And thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics and hope you can join us then. Take care.